Go ahead, Patrick.
Okay, Patrick McCarthy, currently.
Yeah, you've been heard. Yeah, I heard you. I heard you. But let's start this.
Mike is freezing up again. Is everybody here?
Maxine, you bring the there. We're live now. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am Nita, your host for this. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am Nita. Good afternoon, everyone. Your host for this.
And they wanted to make a change. This should have been discussed a while back.
She is probably the accountant or the brains behind.
Today we are Chris.
I'm talking about a transformation.
To discuss that, we are going to include some fourth influential player in Jamaican music industry. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am Nita, a mover and shaker. Your host for this.
And they wanted to make a change. This should have been discussed a while back.
She is probably the accountant or the brains behind the scheming.
I'm talking about a transformation.
No picture.
To discuss that, we are also going to include some forecast.
We lost you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
We lose everybody. A lot of your.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am Nita, your host for this.
And they wanted to make a change. This should have been discussed a while back.
She is probably the accountant or the brains behind the scheming.
I'm talking about a transformation.
To discuss that.
Are you all right, Mike? You're muted. Mike, you're muted. What do you think, Patrick?
He's look like he's frozen.
He's not exactly frozen, but he just keep moving the same way. He has in transmission problems. And he's muted. I don't think he realized that. And he wasn't hearing us properly.
Yeah, he probably gonna go out and come back in.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, we can keep talking. Go ahead and finish introducing yourself then, Pat.
Yeah, as I was saying, I'm currently in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but a long-time community activist and supporter, historical scholar, and very much, a part. My heart is with the struggle of the people of Jamaica.
And this is Mr. Will Superstar Rattigan. Go ahead and introduce yourself to Maxie's store, Will.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we hear.
Yes.
Everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Particularly Maxine, since we haven't met, but the other panelists we're kindred spirits. We meet on a weekly basis. My name is, as mentioned, Wilfred Rattigan, from Waterhouse. In fact, that's my first house in Waterhouse, and it's still there. That picture is just a few months old, and When I left, it was looking like that, and that was way back in 1977. I left. Still the same. I'm a retired FBI agent and practicing attorney. And her and I, we just started up a foundation called the One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation. The purpose of it is to hold government, not just this government, but every government accountable. Because we feel that they have taken the people of Jamaica for granted and they do whatever they feel like doing. And some of the people, for the most part, over the past 6-7 years or so, the feeling is that they have no voice or that their voices are not being heard and they have no options. Well, the One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation provides that option because we're in the development phase right now. I think we've been in existence about 5-6 weeks, and we plan to hold the government accountable through 3 ways as of today. One is lawsuits. And when I say lawsuits, not just in Jamaica, but wherever we can find jurisdiction, the UK, US, wherever. 2, a public relations campaign for issues like the issue. And 3, where we suspect that politicians are in league with corruption, then we will conduct a background investigation and reveal their alleged activities to the public. As well as we're looking to establish a relationship with the Integrity Commission, although I really don't have much faith in them. That's one job I'm actually marketing myself for. I said I don't want any job in Jamaica, but that's one I'd actually market myself for because I think that's the one that I can do the most good for the people of Jamaica. But at this point, it's dysfunctional. So we need to do some things with the Integrity Commission Act of 2017 and other applicable laws. So that's who I am.
Yes, Mike. We're just completing the introduction. I introduced myself, and then Will came in and introduced himself.
Yes,
So it's
yes,
back to you.
Okay, gentlemen, the topic for discussion today is dancehall as the foundation of Jamaican music. But before we get to that topic, that discussion, I on the lives of 2 important individuals in the Caribbean liberation movement whose life was celebrated this week. And namely, I'm talking about Peter Tosh. His birthday was October 19th, born 1944. The second person I'm talking about is Maurice Bishop. He was murdered October 1983. 2 significant individuals who suffer like that, violence. And I know some of us in this group, we are very passionate activists and players in the whole Caribbean movement around Grenada Revolution. And I wonder if anyone would want to share with us their memories of Peter Tosh, Maurice Bishop. Earlier, before the conversation brought to include Maxine and Herb and Will, we were talking about Maurice Bishop and Grenada. And I'm wondering if anyone would like to share anything about Peter Tosh. I know Peter Tosh used to live in Rupi Walters' community at Solitaire Road. Rupi, you know Peter Tosh, right? You met him.
Unmute.
And Rupi?
Yeah.
You muted
me. Yeah, man. As I say, Peter, I like a brethren. I mean, I'm somebody who exchange words and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
In a very fraternal setting. I particularly, in terms of the Whalers overall. I have a particular likeness to Peter. I think people think that him was the
We
rebel
can hardly hear
was.
you, Rupee. If you can come closer to the mic.
Yes, I was saying that I have a particular preference for him as my main whaler. And I have that reference particularly because I find him to be very, very straightforward. I'm not saying that Bunny and Bob wasn't. But Peter, basically, what you see is what you get from Peter, and in a nutshell, in very explicit, people have a tendency to feel that he was arrogant and he was particularly in the section in our society. But the fact that he was that militant in terms of him thinking, the type of lyrics that he wrote, and again, don't nobody get. I mean, both Buddy and Bob. I mean, the value of my work that all three of them do, collectively and individually. I mean, speak volume as it relating to music internationally. Peter, I mean, in last life in more, I mean, no one worse way, and it's part of the situation in a country like our country, where, I mean, the value, so to speak, and life, and when I just talk about because Peter was a great artist, because we have to value our life, right? But it was sad to know such a great Jamaican the way that we lost Peter. And I'm glad that you remember Peter as one of the great reggae ambassadors. And in fact, he actually remind us that it was on the 19th of October was his Earth Strong, so to speak.
You muted mic.
Must be having problems still.
Yeah. Mike, you're muted.
Yes, but I don't know. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear you now?
Yes, okay. Yes. We're talking about Peter Touch Rupee. Seems like we're having so long, we also shift straight into the discussion, huh?
Yeah, I just want to say though that just to pretty much agree with.
Is that something you
said,
think?
With what Rupee said that
because I have no idea what's happening here.
Can you hear? Can you hear?
I can hear.
You hearing us, Mikey?
He's not responding at all.
We need to just keep talking until he come back in.
Yes.
Yeah, I fully endorse what Rupee said in terms of Peter, because
I'm hearing you guys.
Peter was a unique character and musician and very talented artist, both in terms of his writing skills as well as his musical skills. And I would say a lot of the success of the Wailers, right, and the development of reggae music, I would attribute more to Peter than I would attribute it to the other members of the Wailers, right? And that is not to take anything away from them, but Peter was just outstanding, you know. So I just wanted to add that piece. So I fully honor his memory, and glad that we took this moment to really speak to it.
Yes, I'd like to acknowledge Peter. I have a multi-layered relationship in the music industry. I met him when I was in college. One of my friends was actually closely working with him. I met him in New York, and I didn't meet him so much on a music industry perspective. I wasn't actually in the music industry at that time. I was a college student. So I acknowledge, physically knowing him, but otherwise I met him through being involved with the music. Certainly my uncle, Clement Dodd, Studio One. I would have heard, stories from both him and, other people like Jackie Mittoo, Roland Alfonso, the Scatterlights overall, who I interfaced with. And then, I worked with the Marleys at Island Records, Tough Gong in New York. And so by managing and collaborating on the Bob Marley catalog, those years was 94, 95 to about 2000. I was able to get a glimpse, but my deepest glimpse I got of him was actually my work with Bunny Wailer, and through Bunny Wailer, experience, I was able to understand what it was, how they met. He was actually a gambling partner with them as teenagers in Trenchtown. And while gambling, someone brought in a guitar, and the string was broken, and Bunny was able to see that Peter could handle the guitar, and immediately took him across the street to 2nd Street, where Bob and Junior Brathwaite and them were rehearsing. And, immediately he became a part of the group and actually taught them, how to play the guitar, and obviously his musicality came in. I
Now, when you say he
understand.
taught them, are you saying Peter did the teaching or Bunny?
No, Peter.
Peter.
Yeah, because they had been looking. I think Bob at the time had they were strumming the guitar, because the guitar is an instrument that you kind of pick up, and but it's something that they wanted to advance themselves in, and the group. And so he was a fundamental foundation member that of what became the trio, because obviously they started as a quintet, like the Teenagers, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. That was more, what the group was based on. And overall, the personality, as Rupert had spoken of, he was the more militant of the three in terms of issues, and acting, not just singing or being a Rastafari personality, but he came outside of that and was very active, on the streets and in situations that called for that. And certainly in his solo career, he that personality certainly grew, and as was described, he was the more forthright of them, and clashing on a lot of other issues. He was also, the three Wailers were all singer songwriters. What is of note is that the Wailers are promoted almost that like Bob was a lead singer and Peter and Bunny were background singers. But straight from the jump, they were all singer songwriters, and Peter was even as active. He led a lot of songs as the Wailers, in the Wailers, and went and did solo work also with Joe Gibbs, during the time. So yes, he definitely, him and Bunny, once Bob died in 1981, they got even closer together as they were trying to reform the Wailers. And Bunny actually had a power of attorney for Peter to defend their work as the Wailers, as the whole marketing of Bob Marley was very much not promoting of the group history. So yeah, so I agree, and acknowledge his presence and his contribution, and yeah, and we work very closely still, with his estate and his daughter Nyambe and the estate manager. And, so I'm very connected to what has been going on with his legacy, certainly at this level. So acknowledging his work, his contribution, and it should grow futuristically as, time goes on.
Let me just say that.
Yes, you have anything you want to say about? Go ahead, Will.
Oh,
Rattigan, go ahead.
Yeah. Let me just say that I'll acknowledge the man, the music, and the message from a different angle. Growing up in Waterhouse, I never used to live. People in Waterhouse never really used to listen to Bob Marley. Because if you listen to Tubbies, you can't listen to Bob Marley because Tubbies never play Bob Marley. Tubbies are play Dennis Brown, Sugar Minott, Cornell Campbell, John Holt, Horace Sandy, Linval Thompson. Them people there, Tubbies are play. So growing up, I saw Bob Marley as an uptown reggae artist, and we never really paid much attention to him. It wasn't until when I came to America and I saw how popular he was and start really pay attention to the music that I became a fan. And the person that I was most enamored by was Peter Tosh, because he appeared to be the most militant out of all of them. He had a raw, powerful message, and he was very, very forceful, and that kind of reminded me of me. So I just took to him. But when I was in charge of the FBI office in South Africa, I happened to just drive down by Cape Town in a bush, middle of nowhere, and see a Rasta man in the middle of nowhere. I sell some Peter Tosh memorabilia. And it was just astounding to me to see all of that. And I said, brethren, what you know about Peter Tosh? I said, no man, Peter Tosh more popular in South Africa than Bob Marley and Bunny Wailer. And I never believed him until the man now who is in charge
It seems that they don't want Will to talk. Every time Will touch the phone.
Yeah.
Oh man, Will is a dangerous man.
Will raise an interesting point.
Yeah.
Finish your thought.
So the gentleman, and in fact, just to let the listening audience know that the man I'm referring to, he'll be on Jeffrey Tavares' program next week, Sunday. He's doing a crime forum between South Africa and Jamaica. And this man, his name is General Godfrey Lebia. And because of my work, he and I, we worked together. And then I found out he started giving me the history of the ANC and the struggle and how they use Peter Tosh's message as inspiration in the fight against apartheid. And I mean, it was mind blowing for me because I said, and they schooled me about Bob Marley and the Wailers, but particularly Peter Tosh. So I just wanted to throw that out here. So this man was popular beyond the shores of Jamaica, and in certain places, he was even more popular than Bob Marley.
Just to mention 2 points to what you just said, Will, that it wasn't just South Africa, it was also Senegal, right? I mean, Peter Touch was the one that was spoken about. In fact, you had reggae artists coming out of Africa who pattern Peter Touch. Because when you think about people like Alpha Blondy, right?
Lucky Dube.
Lucky Dube. Yeah. I mean, it's clearly, it's like you're listening to Peter Touch, And then again, when you think of Brazil, right? Peter Touch was the first reggae artist to play in Brazil. I'm not even sure if he wasn't the only reggae artist up to the time of his death that played in Brazil. When Bob was already touring other parts of the world, but Peter was the only one who really toured Brazil at the time. So I just wanted to add that piece as well.
I guess I might as well add my portion. I come from a classic music family. My dad was in Jamaican military band. Graduate of Alpha Boys School. And it produced a lot of classic musicians, Lenny Ebert, Carlos Malcolm, and others. So growing up, I was in the cadet band at St. George's College. I came out of an area, Barbican and Grandspin area. And it's a mixed area, good and bad. And, I played football in that Grandspin, Shortwood area. And one of the things that I recall going down to Trenchtown and going down to Tivoli and all these areas was we stopped by and watch Bob them playing football. I didn't see Peter out there, but I recall meeting Bob through my insurance agent and going to a special show he had up at Stables nightclub up Red Hills Road, right? And the thing I remember most about Peter when you put his career up against Bob was, yes, he was a rebel, and yes, he was acceptable to a lot of different people, but it was hard for him to have gotten off on his own without the help of the Rolling Stones band leader Mick Jagger. And when he teamed with Mick Jagger was when I think Mick got his career shooting straight up. Because once he was recognized with Mick and Mick sang with him, he was on Saturday Night Live and a couple other programs he played on. Then he got his acceptance. But the key thing was there was a lot of heated arguments in the background over whether or not Bob was doing good for Jamaica or really and truly whether it was Peter Tosh. But we realized even in the military, when I was in the military, 24 years, what kept me going was a lot of Peter Tosh and Bob's music. When you're in isolated areas and you hear somebody blasting the music out of a barracks, out of a car, you have to go find that person and find out who that person is. And that's how a lot of Jamaicans hooked up in Europe, hooked up in Turkey and all these other areas that were kind of isolated. But what we were doing when we were playing their music, we were actually doing the tourist board job. We're selling Jamaica, right? when we found out how popular these folks were in Europe, where you go to reggae sunsplash and the Wailers is there, and the Germans who speak German know every word in English of every song that the Wailers was playing. I mean, it would just completely blow your mind, you know. And you said to yourself, these people are not just singing it, but they understand it. They comprehend it even better than Jamaicans did. And I realized that even though Jamaica had kind of sidelined uh, the Rasta boy, them as them would say, right? That eventually what has made Jamaica and, and 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 our tourism ever more popular are the very same people that they look down on and they would not talk about them as being creative and as being a powerful influence on the youth of the world. I'm not just talking about the youth in the United States or Canada or the UK, the entire world. Because refereeing football out there, the Spanish leagues and all these other leagues, the Spanish kids them blasting the reggae music, the Portuguese kids, the English kids, all of them doing this. And he said, man, this is what I live to see. Jamaican music is just totally uh, engrossed all over the place. Even the Indian them and the Koreans and the Chinese and the Japanese with their, ping pong music, I call it, when they start singing reggae, it changed the entire persona and got them so popular and got Tiger with the dancehall and all of this stuff was to come later. But this is what I recall traveling through Japan and Korea and all these other places. Just how popular Peter Tosh and Bob Marley were, and that they had given Jamaica an image that people just wanted to travel there and travel to their hometown and find out more about them. And this is one of the best marketing tools we have had over the decades. And that's my observation.
I must point out to the group that in 1974, Peter decided not to perform in Israel because Israel was providing the South Africa government with weapons to fight the ANC. That's one thing you need to know about Peter. Not only he was active in that regard, but Peter was one of those guys who was arrested in October 1968, marching against Ian Smith's Declaration of Rhodesia. So he's a revolutionary, which brings me to Maurice Bishop, another Caribbean revolutionary. And I'm really wondering if we who are involved in the Caribbean liberation movement, if we have a full understanding as to what happened in Grenada. I wonder if we hear the truth and when will the truth surface. But eventually it will come to light, don't you think? As to what happened in Grenada with Maurice Bishop, the implosion of the New Joel movement. There's still a lot more to learn. Do you agree?
I agree. There's always a lot more to learn. That's one of the things about learning. You can't put a cap on learning because learning is something which is ongoing. It lasts as long as you do. You know, we'll be learning things right through until the days we leave here. The day we leave here. You know, and the Grenadian situation, it's funny, but I recall just maybe a few months ago, I was discussing the Grenadian situation with a friend of mine who We go way back. We go all the way back to high school, actually, and it so happens that he was officer in the JDF, right, at the time at the Grenadian situation, and he happened to be the person who was in charge afterwards. He was letting me know, that he even came to know Bernard Card and Phyllis Card afterwards and all of that, and was talking about, the unfortunate situation in Grenada. So, right away, it took me back to those times where, yeah, I mean, I remember clearly when the whole incident took place, when, you know, Bishop met his death, and it was a big shock. And of course, there was all kinds of questions as to what was happening, but the events was unfolding so fast again, and with the whole news situation, and I guess you could call it a partial blackout of the news and all of that. We were not able to really get any real clear understanding as to what took place. So of course, it is something we're always looking forward to, because somewhere somebody's gonna write on it, or we're gonna come into some books or something on it about the incident, hopefully, you know, before all those who have the information have moved on. So that's my thought on that. Unmute her.
Mikey, I don't think
Any other
we
remarks,
might ever
comments?
know the
If not, go ahead, Glass.
Mikey. Yeah, I'm saying, Mikey, we might never ever know the full truth about what happened in Grenada. But it's still important. What is important is that we have enough information to know that the whole situation was caused by selfishness, in the same way that the death of Peter, although he was operating more on the cultural front, it is the same kind of scenario where persons believe that their rights and their interests supersede the rights and interests of other people. So, you can take other people's lives, I mean, just to promote your own livelihood, your own philosophy, you know. So even though both Bishop and Peter was operating on different fronts, the kind of similarities in their death, you know, is kind of striking, because people take it upon themselves that, well, we need to promote our own interests, and if you're not defending our interests, you don't deserve to live.
Basically, Mike, I don't think there's any mystery
Okay.
to what happened in Grenada, or even Jamaica for that matter. You had a movement in America that occurred with the Ronald Reagan election. Remember, Reagan came in after Jimmy Carter. And when Reagan came in, they were of the the opinion that any country that was straddling the fence talking about socialism were being influenced by the USSR and training in the USSR. Were being influenced by the Cubans who trained and who had USSR professors on the island of Cuba that schooled them in the art of communism. Even though Castro himself was a Roman Catholic and only had to accept the communist way when the U.S. refused to do business with him and left all them sugar that they had prepared for shipment right on the wharf. Eisenhower would not bring it to the U.S. But the bottom line is the overthrow of Arbenz in Guatemala and other places, even the overthrow in Iran. All of these movements were ringing true, right? 60s and 70s. Why? Because they were taking charge of their own country's industries. And when Michael took charge of bauxite, and keep in mind that our man in Grenada was a student of the way that Michael professed socialism, and he followed in Michael's footsteps. What the US was afraid of in Grenada was that the Cubans were setting up telecommunications there that could possibly pick off the US communication satellite packets, much like how the US doesn't want Huawei in Jamaica setting up 5G, which they have, and now the US traffic have to go through the Huawei lines. They don't want that. That's the undersea cabling that come ashore at Ocho Rios. And this is why the ambassador gave Vaz his visa back and his wife, because Vaz is in charge of the telecom, with the hope that the US would get a 5G contract. But the bottom line is the Soviet Union was on one side, the US was on one side. So the US and Reagan saw it, you either with us or you're against us. The New Jewel movement, they saw the leader faltering when Bernard Cord and his wife decided they're going to go in and kill him. Right? I don't know if they suspected that the US was making overtures to him to make Grenada more successful. But the bottom line is they took him out. And they took him out hard. So, Reagan did his thing, and Siaga played that game to the T. And Siaga won over Reagan's approval, and for 8 years he ruled, or he presided over the prime ministership of the cabinet, and he got everything he wanted from Ronald Reagan. Not so in
Herb, listening to you make me want to investigate more. It seems like at least there are 3 different or 4 different stories as to what happened in Grenada. Yeah. I don't think we have the time to explore that, too tough, because we can't have our guest just sitting in the corner waiting. She must, I think today is Sunday, so she must need some time to take care of some business, personal business and what have you. But that's a topic that we need to discuss further, because I need to see some of your documentation. You understand? It seems like you have a lot available. Rupi saying something?
Unmute, Rupi. Unmute.
I don't see muted,
Unmute.
Oh, he's muted now.
Rupi, you have to unmute.
I don't know what's wrong with Rupi, but
yeah, I can see it now. He's muted.
Yeah, he's unmuted.
I think that's the problem.
You got to turn his volume up.
Yeah, turn up your volume, man.
No, he's not.
Not hearing you.
Still not hearing.
Oh, man.
Refocus your camera.
Yeah, let's proceed.
Yeah.
Let's just proceed. As I was saying, my camera.
Just tell him go out and come back in, Mikey.
Okay. No, but I'm not. It's not allowing me to do any of that. Let us shift the discussion to.
Oh, go ahead, Mike. We're hearing you.
Because Maxine is here and she must have some place she want to go. She can't spend the entire evening with a bunch of men, Right.
I did
So,
block out a couple of hours.
Maxine,
Yes.
welcome to the round table.
Waterhouse
Sunday.
vibes.
Oh, you did. Well, that's good.
Come Nita gone out now. See,
Yeah, the
Mac,
steam is too hot.
you might well go ahead and give us something on dancehall since that was his main overture. Um, who who made the switch from reggae to dancehall? How do we go from that to a
Well,
more?
dancehall is really the history of the music, um, from a space to a, technologically how the music industry of Jamaica was built. It
Uh-huh.
was built on the sound system, and the sound system entered as technology across the board. It wasn't just in Jamaica, it was what's happening, you know, globally. Well, led by the US and the UK. In terms of the development of sound technology, from telephones to radio, you know, to the recording, being able to record sound on a physical platform. So our pioneer, Headley Jones, in the 1940s, um, developed a specific sound amplification uh, system. Basically, it was to have him compete in the marketplace, to have the records that were being imported, mostly from the UK at the time, um, to sell in his electronic, radio shop, Bop City. And the story is that Tom de Sebastian, Thomas Wong, had a hardware store across the street. He himself had been keeping parties, and the clarity of the sound impacted him, and he asked Headley Jones to design a system, or he potentially bought the system Headley had, and Tom Wong is who named it a sound system, specifically now to, play the imported records in the spaces that were developing for the public to come, switching over from the live band, era into the recording era. This is the basis of the sound system competition. Headley Jones went on after doing Tom's Thomas Wong's building his first set. He built the sets for Duke Reed,
Sebastian.
Tom de
Yeah.
Sebastian. His name was Thomas Wong, but his sound system was called Tom de Sebastian. And he built the
Yeah.
system for Duke Reed, Coxon, and others, And so the whole sound system industry um, developed, and out of that competition, um, developed the whole recording industry. Headley Jones went on to design, certainly, Mr. Dodd's studio that he opened up in 1961. So for me, and this project that brought Michael and I together, is Dancehall 50, which is really celebrating the 50 years of the dancehall as a genre, but it's also platforming the technical role of the sound system and the technology development in Jamaica, which has been unique as a country outside of the US and the UK and Japan. Japan would be on par with Jamaica in how countries outside of the US in particular use the technology as it was developing there to develop and create sound amplification developments that spawned their own local music industries. I think Jamaica would be the only developing society globally that has done that. And that's part of my efforts in rebranding. I call it rebranding of dancehall to capture not simply the genre, but to have people understand what the genre is made of, but what the genre seeks to represent, which is in a parallel way to reggae. As you know, reggae is also a genre that, because of the success of the Bob Marley, that name or that title was eventually adopted to describe all Jamaican music. Um, Adopted by, I'm not sure who, but maybe that's research that we can do, along the way as to why all Jamaican music and genres, are being described as reggae. You understand, based on where it came in the historical development of the music. But it clearly has to do with the success and popularity of Bob Marley, and you know, then it puts us in a position, which is why dancehall is being established now to broaden um, people's understanding of Jamaican music, to still take the benefit of reggae, but to expand how people engage with the Jamaican music industry, which is a very innovative society. It's not just based on lyrics and or cultural movements that are adapted by the industry, but that the technology and the advancement is also as important, and the pioneers and the engineers and the people who are behind this are also recognized, which will attribute a lot more to our society and our youths, to know, because people like Headley Jones, King Tubby's, which is a major um, pioneer in his own right. He came 10 years after Headley. He also opened a record, a radio electronic shop. And from that basis, he built a studio and, invested this knowledge in the music and developed styles or innovations that went on to affect global urban and popular music. So dancehall as 50 is celebrating the role of the genre of as well as a history of the sound system and the role that it has played and continues to play. And part of why it's being platformed now is because of hip hop celebrating its 50th anniversary. And the focal point of that anniversary is the role of Kool Herc, whose technique came from the sound system as well, out of Trenchtown into Franklin Town and then, migrating into the Bronx. But everything that he did and achieved technically to be given this accolade is coming out of the Jamaica dancehall history, that is connected to the genre that um, appropriately was also developed in 1974 when Jamaica, as a music industry, created a platform for itself, good or bad. It's called copywrongs, not copyright. But we started to copy our music that was developed in the 60s, especially the rocksteady era. The rhythms of that era became the staple of the sound systems. And those rhythms now were re-recorded on either lick over or in terms of Studio One and the role of Sugar Minott being the first artist that recorded directly on pre-recorded rhythms. It was the first time Mr. Dodd or any artist at Studio One did not record on a brand new song. And in re-recording on these songs, a new lyrics, new songs were created that opened up the marketplace now for these foundation rhythms to be that were popularized almost like a folk language by these sound systems to become the basis of the next 20 to 30 years, dominating, the output of the music. And it also elevated the DJs, the rapping style um, came to fore based on these what is now described as the reusable rhythms. So as we have a case going on internationally with the reggaeton market using our rhythms or using a particular rhythm, in fact, um, to create a whole industry. So we ourselves did the same thing and created what we now know as the dancehall industry or genre, which itself has several subgenres. So dancehall is even that part of dancehall, we are explicating, in this way to understand that dancehall, is not simply the DJ that is, focused on at, several times to define it, but it is a much broader platform involving rhythms, technology, and also, very importantly, it involves singers and it coexists with the other genres. It coexists with reggae, it coexists, it's not something that comes and displaces, yeah, our creativity, but it is very much bandied about locally and not seen in its full impact, not just in Jamaica, but in all, in the globe, in what it has done, and it continues to feed and fertilize urban music over the last 50 years. And so, again, harking back to Hip Hop 50 and its celebration in the mass mainstream market, it explicates the sound system. And certainly in the 90s, when our population, primarily in New York, our Jamaican diaspora, our children became rappers like Busta Rhymes, Biggie Smalls, Heavy D, you know, we also not only stepped out as dancehall stars, but we also stepped out because of our integration into the urban New York environment as, very established personalities in the hip hop market. We went on in the same period to also, through the fertilization of Panama, Panamanians in New York, established dancehall reggae Espanol, which again came from our migration into Panama and the fact that our Jamaican culture, as in several countries in the region, Cuba is another country that has a whole area of Cuba that is called Little Jamaica, you know. But in Panama, in particular, you know, the Jamaican lifestyle is held there, and a lot of next generation Panamanians, their grandmothers or their home, they speak patois, they speak, you know, Jamaican, and coming into New York, they, you know, New York is a melting pot, you know, and that's where the dancehall reggae Espanol became preeminent. That led to what we now have as one of the largest music outputs of the world in terms of economy and reach in reggaeton. And we now have more of a displacement coming out of Africa with the Afro beats, which is another uh, scenario that was again driven by our sound systems. A lot of this coming out of England, you know, our sound system. That was our first market of taking over England and affecting their music industry. Through the sound system, it actually flowed into Africa, places like Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa. It was exported there along with our music, and now Afrobeats has come and is dominating the global industry, especially actually through the same pathway that Jamaicans took, where their diaspora, the African diaspora in the metropolitan markets, are the basis, you know, for this crossover. But it's all coming out of this fertilization, and the root of it is the sound system and the dancehall genre that it specifically, you know, has impacted. And so, in terms of Waterhouse vibes, you know, and meeting with Michael, and you know, for Jamaica, a lot more is promoted again because of the reggae Bob Marley effect. Um, Trenchtown is more focused on and very much linked to that history. And so, what we certainly found in collaborating with Michael is that Waterhouse, which, you know, I'm completely aware of, but that doesn't have the cachet or the journalistic promotion, you know, as a music hub, right? We kind of know about it,
Hub.
you know, House, etc. But the specificity of it is more it's very, how you call it, very inherent with the dancehall. You know, I every time I turn, it's now Waterhouse. I was speaking with Sly a week or so ago, and I didn't even know he came from Waterhouse. And then he started to reel off his history, and I was like, wow, you know. And then, you know, his, not just his history, but the history of sounds, the tubbies and the amplifiers, not only of tubbies, but all the other sound people who were building their own sets, because you have major sets and you have minor, you know, players. But it's so fascinating how much revolves around Waterhouse. And since speaking
Um,
to Michael, people like Lloyd Brevet, who I'm very close to because of the
a question,
Scatterlight.
Maxine.
Yes. Well, anyway, I could go on and on and on, but that's basically the framework. I am a music eh? I'm a music history person because
before
I
you
am
ask a question, Las, can you hear me?
Yeah, man, I'm hearing you. Go ahead.
Yes, I just
Maxine,
yes.
I wanted to start off this discussion. I wanted to start off a discussion by asking you the definition, a definition. When I was growing up, to me, dancehall was a social, a physical space. It was a physical space. Now, in the 90s, dancehall transitioned into a rhythm. How do you define
70s.
dancehall? What exactly is it? A social space?
Well, as
I
I
didn't get
say,
that.
it is a yeah, that it is all that. It is the technology, it's the space, and that became a genre,
Okay.
right? Because a lot of what is involved in
Oh,
the
okay, okay,
genre
okay.
was already occurring in the timeline of ska, rocksteady, reggae. A lot of the elements that is now known as dancehall was already occurring, right? So that's because it's a space, a technology that then
Correct.
became refined in the 70s, actually, when the reusable rhythms and what that brought on, both the reusable rhythms, and within that period, I think about the 80s, you had the changeover from analog to digital, right? Or when I say changeover, because both of them still continue to exist, but the dominance of digital mixed with the rhythms created another explosion of
Yeah.
production and styles and so on and so forth. So because we are not tracking
Okay.
all of these layers, then we get caught into these ruts and begin to kind of the world is benefiting and making major impact and inroads with dancehall while we are here talking about lyrics because we are so hyper, we're not interpreting it in its widest capacity,
So
which would
then,
also which would also help us in Jamaica and our youths and people who are being influenced by it to understand that, oh, it's not just how it's being,
so,
handled.
so, so for clarification, then Maxine, I guess you could say that, and this is my takeaway from what you explained, right? That historically, it is these transition points which you highlight that really shape dancehall in terms of how we understood it to be, and how we understood where it's coming from and what it is today.
Yes. And we need to package it in a manner that we benefit from its innovation, which
No,
is affecting global music. We're not benefiting because we are not
but
seeing it in
but
its full.
to that point, would you say, because this is my feeling now, and you can tell me, if you can expand on that. It's that dancehall as we knew it back then, where it was coming from. Because my understanding is, and I think you have said it, is that dancehall really came out of that space which Michael is talking about, where it was the big band sound at first, right? And the dancehall, right? Primarily on a weekend. And then it transformed to the recording studio, right? And then further development taking place. But as all this happens, a lot of what I've seen and understood is that in terms of the business aspect of it, this is where the disconnect is with Jamaica, because especially when it went international, we were not the ones who really took it international and packaged it and was really you know in control of the business aspect of it, right? But we basically were providing the artist, the music and all of that, but not the business aspect.
I
Right.
think
So
we
we were
were
not to
involved with
control
the
the
business
development.
aspect. We were the business aspect, because when we migrated with the Windrush generation,
Mm-hmm.
we also set up our record shops in England, just like how we set up our record shops here in America. So the music and the business of it,
But what about the
um,
distribution?
the distribution as well, because we were the ones who were, at the foundation of its distribution and its expansion. What And even its crossover. I mean, if you look at it, in England, Island Records is a Jamaican company, out of Jamaica, that migrated in 1962, and set up a platform there, and then started to license in, Coxsone, Duke Reed, and Beverly's, right? And then you had Carl Palmer setting up Jetstar Records, another, Jamaican, and these were two stalwart companies, coming out of Jamaica, and licensing, etc. It wasn't, and it's following us. It's following us, the people, migrating and mixing with the sound system. Because if you watch the pattern now, the sound system goes into England, changes the context of how England consumes music, from a pub to a dance, right? And that opens up the nightclub, opens up, impacts English music, not just our Jamaican music.
Mm-hmm.
We're having an effect on England, the Beatles, Rollins, all of these people are feeding off of our framework, our existing.
Yeah, but
So
then I,
I understand where you're going, but I'm just correcting you
Mhm.
that it's not us in Jamaica and somebody taking something away from us. It's we Jamaicans going in, setting an infrastructure. The problem that we'll see is that Jamaica didn't have a proper intellectual property and or business framework up to today to even deal with the diaspora. You understand what I'm saying? What the diaspora does is not ingrained into Jamaica. There's a disconnect on our level that then allows for the international to take it, in the way that we are,
that's
seemingly
that's that's
shocked at.
that's definitely the part I'm talking about,
Yes, I think
right?
that's
Because
what I was trying
yeah,
to.
yeah,
Mhm,
yeah, yeah.
mhm.
But another quick
Maxine,
question. You mentioned Thomas. What is his name?
Thomas Wong.
Thomas Wang. Is that the same Thomas technicians out of Vineyard Town or something like that? They were
I no,
building
Spring Street.
building amplifiers and all that.
no, he didn't build
No, he
amplifiers.
was a
Oh,
liquor
okay.
store man.
Oh,
He was
okay.
a,
Okay.
yeah, he was a
Okay. Okay.
hardware type
Okay.
person.
Okay.
But I
Yeah.
found that we have a nation of innovators
Yeah.
in the sound amplification
Yes.
business
Yes.
that have not been invested in. Not even Headley Jones was invested in.
Yeah.
And what I've found, why I'm very focused on this, is that their peers in other countries with the same interest and innovation are the basis of all the top electronic companies of the world. So
Yeah.
Sony Electronics, JBL,
Yep.
you name it.
Yep.
Their pioneers are just the same type of people as what we are and what we have done in Jamaica, but we are not invested in.
Yeah. And
You understand?
we were doing that way back.
Way back. In fact,
Yeah.
we influenced them.
Yeah. Yeah.
We influenced the King Tubby's and Headley Jones and these guys. When you
Yeah.
start to talk to the sound amplification personalities globally,
Yeah.
they rate these guys
Yeah. Because
heavily.
like I mentioned, there was the Thomas Electronics. There was, as I was talking to Michael about in the week too, there was Gussie, who did
Go see, yeah, King
Attorney,
Jammies,
Jammies, of course, right?
yeah,
There was a number top
number of them,
top
and they're still
technicians. Yeah.
and they still are, because
Yeah.
when the new equipments are designed by these sound companies, then they're retrofitted into our sound. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And
Yeah.
tinkered with, like, and then it's plugged in and it creates innovation. And so when you see the innovation in Sony Electronics, for example, it's not the same innovator from
No?
1946. It's a current innovator
Yeah.
using the same
Yeah,
principles
yeah, on
based
this
on
personal system, people.
what, you understand, obtained. Yeah.
And another piece to that point is that because this is again something I've seen where I remember just on the eve
That's what
of
I'm
I'm getting a feedback, guy. So,
just on the eve when the personal computer was coming out, right, in the 80s, early 80s.
sorry, I missed
um you had in New York, yeah, guys started to merge the amplifiers with the computer, right, and start to generate their own sound, which wasn't coming from um it wasn't coming anymore from directly from the dancehall. They were taking stuff from the dancehall and reforming it completely, right, on the computer.
In fact, someone spoke to me yesterday about interviewing King Tubby's. They have this recorded, that King Tubby's was actually recreating the sound of the dance hall in record form for you to experience it, right?
Mhm.
So what he was actually doing is the spatial experience of you being in the dance hall, etc., is what he was recreating specifically, like he was
Yeah.
explaining. That's what he was doing. That is, trying to bring that into the studio. That is the other major innovation, was the pathway from the sound system into the studio. That that interplay, which still occurs up to today, and it defines our music. And so, and in understanding that, then you will understand where the future is going to be. You understand what I'm saying? So instead of saying, oh, these people are talking about some shatter thing or whatever, you understand? Because all of these trends, they come from the fringe, they become mainstream, and a lot of what becomes mainstream is not even the lyrics, it's the sound. You understand? So then you have the pop
Creativity.
artists.
The
The pop
creativity.
artists now want to sound like you, and then they add their elements to your sound and then create a whole new style. So if you know that your value is there, then you would be protecting your sound recordings. You wouldn't have just been focused on your lyrics, which is what is interesting about the reggaeton case. You understand? In that it's it's a very interesting thing to watch how it's going to play out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a whole, not just a country, because reggaeton is Latin America, several countries that are using this style that specifically is targeted back to Jamaica, which we understand. Nobody has to prove that, but the business of it wasn't structured, but it went and created a phenomenon like a genie coming out of a bottle, and you actually cannot get the genie
All
back
right.
into the bottle. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I have a
but
question, Maxine. I have a question.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Who is who is spearheading this project you're talking about, Maxine? Is it the government, or is it the industry players themselves?
Well, it's the industry players. Me being the head cook and bottle washer, because because of my unique interface with so many layers, and I actually just came out of a round with or still maybe in it with the Rastafari community intellectual property rights, um how they get benefited from this roots reggae proliferation globally in the world economy, and the whalers intellectual property rights issues with the quote unquote Bob Marley and the whalers taking the name of the group in their solo career of Bob Marley, one member taking the group name, and then absorbing the group intellectual property without any sharing of that rights. So my focus on dancehall, and why I am here also is, as you know, my late husband is Sugar Minot, and he is considered a pioneer of the dancehall genre, right? And because he's a singer, he's not necessarily, understood his role, and it's not only because he's a singer, but he himself developed the same profile of a sound system and a music label, and developing acts that were both singers and DJs. You know what I mean? So it is really my legacy, looking at the intellectual property rights of Jamaican music, and the having to fight so hard in Jamaica, not the world, but in Jamaica, for Jamaica to recognize and to structure those rights to give us a better ability to benefit. That's what promoted me to look at dancehall in the way that and obviously my uncle is Clement Dodd, and that's where I started in the business. So I'm really encapsulating my legacy in noting that we have an opportunity here with the promotion of the Hip Hop 50 to step out, right? So because of my
So
career crossing all these companies, VP Records, Sony Music, Universal, etc., I'm able to spin it out.
will there be like a series of events over a particular period of time to mark what you're doing?
Yes, we actually noted 2024 to 2027, a 3-year platform where we ideated it out of the what was happening in 73, 74, and what happened in 77 was the release of the first album, and also the birth of several significant labels within this time. Channel One, so many, significant players, King Tubby's, etc., birthed in this period. So we're not, while I say there's a focal point, it is not like to say, oh, it starts on the 11th of 11th day of a month at a certain time. A birth is a collective layered experience, but you can see enough environmental, effects, to know that a shift was there, a transition period, as Patrick was saying. Yeah, but it's not that we're stepping out saying it in a vacuum. The Hip Hop 50 that was also a 3-year campaign. Um, and it explicated, it went in and allowed enough of a time for this history to step out. You know what I mean? And there, documentaries to be made, um, brand, what you call it, brand sponsorships to be, incorporated, and also, prior to this Dancehall 50, I actually had envisaged a dancehall music museum to do what I am explaining now about the Dancehall 50. Prior to that, it was my focus that a dancehall music museum should be set up, linked to the audio amplification industry of the world, and bringing that partnership that has not existed to date, right, to the forefront. Whereas we have linked with various lifestyle brands like, Puma, Nike, and a lot. Certainly, the Mali estate has, you understand, developed with the lifestyle world. It was interesting for me to see and note that Mighty Crown, which is a Japanese dancehall sound system, did a major deal with Nike, and no Jamaican dancehall sound system has been, elevated to the level that it could do such a major deal. So there are things happening in the marketplace that I'm aware of, and the potential that I felt, okay, with these other things under my bonnet, I can step out now with my own experience as well, because I was, at Sony, Columbia, when Shabarangs, Supercat, Cobra stepped out, and crossed over in Dinah King, all of these guys. So I
But
myself was a player, in that.
Maxine, these are big plans. Do you think you have the support, or the industry is organized enough to, step up and make these these things a reality that you're talking about?
Yes. If you look at it,
Without the support of government,
oh, definitively, I don't want the support of government. Um, well, let me put it differently. The
You
lack of
should.
the
You should.
support of government, the lack of the support of government in key areas, right? And they benefit. Put it this way: government and government policy will benefit, but I
brand
definitely
it
think
as a government thing, probably.
I've had my experiences in the Jamaica space. I was there for 20 years in my career, after my international success. And so I know the limits of the Jamaica space, right? And I'm not bashing it, because it is structural, it's geographical, it's so many things that defy logic. You know what I mean? Because of these structural deficiencies,
Deficiencies.
right? Which it's the very size is a structural deficiency. So when I was in Jamaica, and I'm saying that, okay, as a music industry, if you're not incorporating your diaspora Jamaican industry in your planning, then you're lost, because it is your diaspora companies that are driving the industry. So how can you be talking in Jamaica about the Jamaican music industry, and you do not count in your data and in your planning, your diaspora companies. So while I went there and I was knocking and, bringing my expertise into the Jamaican space and seeing how I was treated, like enemy number one, you know, I then realized that they don't want, there's something structurally occurring that they don't want. They fear the diaspora, you understand? And they structurally gatekeep it out, right? So then I realized that, oh, okay, so this is what occurs here. It led me literally to the United Nations. You understand? I had to complain, with a group that I was with to say, listen, these people here, I tried to develop, especially through the Rastafari, an indigenous platform to be able to speak outside of the confines that the people in Jamaica are in. I mean, when I went to the United Nations people in Jamaica, they said Jamaica, they're surprised based on the Jamaican personality abroad, even in the UN, how dormant the Jamaican NGO civil society platform is, you know? And even me going into the Rastafari focus on their rights and my rights as a Rastafari, I was shocked at how the even the outside regional Rastafari entities are much more, proactive than the ones in Jamaica. So as I was saying to Michael, I don't know what science they're working on.
But Maxine, you really touch on a real key point, because that's kind of where my question was going. We last raised that question, and it is that the Jamaican music, the only way the Jamaican music can be seen in a real perspective is to understand that what it was birthed out of and what it became, right, is what it has symbolized for Jamaica globally, right? So in other words, what you're saying is clearly reflecting that the Jamaican government still has not come to grips with understanding the depth of Jamaican music internationally.
No, they haven't. I've worked with the Jamaica several initiatives driven by the United Nations and intellectual property rights, because I had to grow to understand intellectual property rights, to understand the value that we can extract may not be the literal record or the literal publishing or the literal royalty, but there are other values that are measurable, right? And that have influence, brand value, right? So I was part of the nation branding exercise in relation to the expertise that came into Jamaica to say, your brand, which incorporates your music, your food, your diaspora, all of these things that is worth billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
How can you engage it? You have to organize it. And they brought the principles of organization and structure and what needed to occur in Jamaica. And none of that
But
none of that was operationalized, right?
yeah, but that point
Can I say something?
clearly is showing that the Jamaican government cannot continue to ignore their responsibility, right, in dealing with the music industry. Because the fact of the matter is that without the support of the government, right, it is what has put Jamaica on the global map, right, in recent years. I mean, nobody can deny that. It has been our music first and foremost, right? Our food too, to a lesser extent, but our music. And Herb even mentioned it earlier on, right? He talked about being in Europe, right, and hearing our music blasting, right, and going in search to see who is playing this music. And these are experiences I can relate to, right? Because this is something we see time and time again. One of the things which you identify by is our flag or music, right? And it's more so our music, right? When we go on, a lot of times it's not Jamaicans playing these music. Right?
This brings
And the
us to a
moment you
point
mention
about
Jamaica 21, the first thing they mention is your music.
Well, the same thing. I'm looking at Rupert, and I was very involved because of the music in the nascent ganja industry. I'm a part of the Ganja Growers and Producers Association because of the role of the music and the Rastafari culture in the brand value of Jamaican ganja, which is its biggest value. You understand? Jamaica is just a dot in the ganja producing physical world of ganja.
Yeah.
But we are the top brand. So
Absolutely.
if you don't, so when I said to them, okay, we lost it in the music, let us not lose it for ganja.
Can I bring?
Again, they dropped the ball.
Yeah, Rupee.
Rupee.
We're not seeing you, Rupee.
Yeah, can't hear Rupee. Rupee.
We're not seeing you.
Something is wrong with his. Maybe he needs to come in and come back out.
He's on his phone.
No, but I'm saying maybe he needs to click off and
come back
on.
It work.
Anyway.
Yeah. But while that is happening, let me ask you this, Max.
Maxine.
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
I'm hearing you.
Yes.
Yes, it's just Rupert. Okay, Rupert maybe going out to come back.
The question the question I ask is this. All of the things that you identify, they come from our communities, whether it's Trenchtown, Waterhouse, or whatever. But yet still, nobody can point to tangible benefits that these communities derive from giving birth to all of these stuff. We see individual make progress, individual get rich and famous, but no tangible benefit for the community from whence the genre emerge. Why is this so? And that's one question. The second question is this: when it comes to government and organization around Jamaican music, could it be that the problem is that the music is so fragmented and controlled by different individuals, so there's no need for them to come together as a group, as a collective, because every man is making his little money from off what little them can grab hold of? The disorganization, is it deliberate?
Yes, it's deliberate.
I'm asking you, Maxie.
A big part of it is ignorance too.
It's deliberate ignorance. But what I'm saying, is that intellectual property rights is a set of rights that has grown in ascendancy, right? In the new knowledge economy and in the new, economy of the world. So whereas in the 1950s and so on, intellectual property wasn't known. It was known in the law because it was already in the policy of the law, but it was
not
never.
in Jamaica though.
No, it was in the law, but it was not practiced by the Jamaican government. You understand? Because that would mean empowerment of the creative class. That is what you're going to have to acknowledge when you ask why this ignorance and the fragmentation, right? We're coming from a colonial society where we had no rights. In 1944 was where we just got the right to vote and all, That's when when this whole thing was starting. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So our intellect, what is happening now, I'm aware that even our office, Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, is
Yeah.
a recent agency. You understand what I'm saying? That was focused on because how Jamaica was using the intellectual
Okay.
property of the world without any, so it wasn't us internally saying we have to get this together. We have been put under pressure by the global trade agreements, etc., that we have to get our intellectual property standards up. So
Right.
what we have been doing is we have been creating these agencies and giving them no resources,
Right.
right?
I understand you clearly.
Um,
I understand you clearly.
you,
And that's
you
a key
guys are
point.
hearing me now? You
Yes. Yes,
hearing me
Yes,
Rupert.
now?
Yes,
yes,
Rupert,
yes,
yes.
yes, yes,
All
Rupert.
right. Let just give me a few minutes. First of all, let me comment, Maxine, for what I would consider to be a Hercules-like effort, so to speak. And she have to be Hercules in order to take on this task because
Yes.
it is a
Yes.
huge, huge, huge task. I've
Yes.
worked with Maxine in the past and I know her capacity. Um, I was privy to peruse your document, Maxine, both in terms of the the proposal and the proposal as it relating to the museum. I just quickly want to say that my association with music, I think maybe Michael would have known is through Reggae Sunsplash and Sonergy. I was not director with Sonergy, but I've worked in a very senior position with them over a number of years. And I started the dancehall, the original dancehall series at New Kingston with, I think at that time, the brethren that promoted. I think I think it's scientists. Um,
No, Mikey Savage.
so
Mikey
that is
Savage.
my Mikey Savage, right? That is my experience in terms of the space itself. I want to just agree with Maxine and a few points, Patrick, that you need to understand. Or you guys in the diaspora need to understand some more. Successive Jamaican government, Patrick, including the government where me support, and everybody know, because me no hide it. Me support the People's National Party. Have not in a serious and a real way give their support to the music industry. And I can tell you this one is 10 times worse. And Maxine draw a good parallel. The parallel she draw is the ganja industry. The People's National Party take the initiative and started the thing. And everybody feel good in terms of decriminalization and the proposal along decriminalization. But then the minister then, which was Anthony Hilton Michael, member of parliament, him to a great extent, him F up the thing in terms of the cost to enter it and the 1 million restriction in terms of people who involve and literally spend millions of dollars to go into the industry. And the worst thing the PNP government could have done then was to bring some criminal from the DEA, right, to come there and set up the regulations. And I mean, one person said to me that as a security officer, it was easier for him to have 100 guns and don't even have 20% of the regulation that than the type of regulation that is put on the ganja industry. So Maxine is right. And we just use that parallel in order to show what is happening in terms of the music industry. Right? I would also want to say though, Maxine, why would we want to build a museum out of Jamaica? That is what I want to question. And
What do you mean
secondly,
out of Jamaica? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, the proposal is that you can build a museum in Jamaica. That is not what I see in the thing. Maybe I over, I have not
Yes, so it's
maybe
Jamaica
look at the thing
based.
in depth. It's
Yeah, it's
Jamaica
Jamaica
based. All right,
based. Yes. Mhm.
right. The second thing I'd want to add to is that the mecca of dancehall music is if Trenchtown is the mecca of reggae, and which dancehall, as you correctly put it, is a brand, so to speak, of reggae. Kingston 11, in a nutshell, is really the mecca of reggae. It's not just part of.
Come back, Rupi. Come back.
Radigan, you have to
Yeah,
take that.
but Rupi make a solid point there, Maxine. He make a solid point. I make a number of
in
solid points. And it wasn't lost on me,
This
what you
Maxine,
said in terms of the Jamaican um government and what they were not doing. 'Cause that was clear.
I think the discussion bring us, Maxine, to the whole issue of cultural policy of these governments that we have had, not just the present government, but over the years. Cultural policy, and specifically when it comes to issues like cultural tourism, and what is their approach. I think the governments that we have had still in the whole concept of sea and sand, and bringing in these big hotel developers from all over the world, and they don't see the potential in the creative people in the country as the drivers for the tourism product that the cultural policy should promote. I see that as a big stumbling block in the way of what you are doing right now, Maxine. That is why
they're not.
I
Yeah,
said
go ahead.
and raised the issue of whether you're doing whether you're doing it alone or you're doing it with any support from the government, because the cultural policies that we have been provided with over the years sit stifling not just the music but all our culture.
Well, like I said, the government issue. I went to Barnard College in Manhattan, ostensibly studying political science, and I never, growing up, thought I would be in the music industry. It's by meeting my uncle on a sojourn into Jamaica, and I'll have to send you the video about that. But I come from a
Please do.
political um, background, in how I see the world and how I understand the world. So I'm not surprised. I'm only analyzing what is happening, and then having to readjust through facts and experience, how to approach, um, and to also how to define my legacy. I'm not saying that changes will occur within my lifetime, but my legacy, it would be important for me to use my experience in a manner to document at minimum, you know what I mean? And to, you know, most people think I'm a lawyer when they see how I address and respond to things. But I don't see these people as obstacles to say like they're obstacle. Everything is an obstacle. You understand? You just keep looking for the window of opportunity to act, and the universe will bring appropriate situations, on the table. That has been my whole life. You know what I mean? Every time I'm to do something, I may seem like I'm by myself, but I'm not, because there are many people of like minds, of like experiences that just want, and the world has moved that way. You understand? Giving you the opportunity in spaces like what we're doing now to say, okay, you understand? I want to do this. I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of this movement, you know, etc., etc. So, but
Maxine, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Maxine. I hear what you're saying,
Mike, you want coming back, yeah?
but you have decided to enter, and so I'll be interested in finding out about your journey and experience within this industry as a woman. You heard the question?
yeah, I heard you. Well, I'm a tomboy.
Yeah.
Everybody mute so we can hear it.
That might be Rupee.
Mike, you
I'm
want
not gonna
coming
I'm
back?
not gonna take a shot.
Yeah,
Waterhouse.
All right, come in, Rupee.
yeah, Rupee.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want us from to come in. That I was saying, Maxine, that Kingston 11 thing, you know, man.
Rupee,
It's massive.
your
From
phone, Rupee.
2 miles. Eh? Yeah, you
Your
hear
phone
me?
kind of low.
Yeah, you hear
That's
me
okay.
now?
I'm hearing.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
are
I'm
hearing.
hearing.
Keep talking. Keep talking. Just start
Yeah,
a low,
man.
a little bit low.
Yeah, all right. I can try and speak up as loud as possible. That Kingston 11 thing is huge. We're
Make
talking
us hear,
from
make
2
us hear,
miles
make us hear.
inland, Cockburn Pen, Tower Hill, Olympic Way into Waterhouse. The major artists, them I can tell you, come out of that stretch in terms of dancehall artists. And in fact, there's about 4 huge sound systems that come out of that Kingston level, which is Tubby's, Jammies, King Gap, and Jack Scorpio. And I can tell you that, for example,
What about King Attorney?
Trinity Frankie Paul, right? Back to Majestic Garden, and Meditation and Barrington Leave from that Cockburn Pen where he come from. Early B, Jatama, Supercat, Ugly Man, Ninja Man, which moved between Cockburn Pen and Mall Road. Little Twitch, Daddy Rye, and we go on to Tower Hill, Olympic Capture Land, Admiral Bailey, Josie Whale, Shabba. We move to Seaview, Bunty, Shabba, Scare Them Crew, Harry Toddler, Naughty Coachy, Elephant Man, Firehouse, and there's so much in Firehouse, right? Shaka Demus, Junior Reed, Beanie Man, Benji, Half,
Maxine has a list.
Right? The point I'm making is that I think there is a way in which, just like how we say that Trenchtown is the hub, so to speak, for reggae music, Kingston 11 is really the hub, in my own opinion, for dancehall music. And as you put the thing that dancehall is not just DJ, but is basically a lot of elements, so to speak, with technology, with the sound system, with the DJ themselves, and so on and so forth, and all of that. So I would want, in terms of your general concept as it relating to your 50th anniversary, that you actually include. In fact, I leave out your husband, Sugar Minor, and Youth Man Promotion, with Yami Bowl or the same tenor, Courtney Melody, Liquor John, and one whole more, which come from that whole Waltham stretch there. So there's a way in which you can say that whole Kingston 11 stretch is really the maker, so to speak, a dancer.
Yeah.
But I want to support you a little more, Maxine, in terms of trying to make some of my brethren them in the diaspora understand the difficulty of the government. And I'm not trying to be partisan. But I tell you before, I criticize my government where there's a need to, and I don't afraid to. In fact, I was an organizer for Region 4, and I can say this explicitly, that the present government is 10 times worse as it relating to working with these things. And I can understand why Maxine wants to take a position that is more independent independent because she thinks she would get more done. Because what them basically again doing, is just peer electioneering crap and to use it in a way in order to see if them can get vote. And that's precisely what them doing with the ganja industry now. Just over the weekend at the Connects conference, the minister, which I mean, basically say that he must support and want to open the thing where tourists can just come in and buy ganja legally. And then Miss Grange now she go up on the platform and basically saying to people that we must I just trying to remember to say our exact word. Come back to it. But the point I'm making is that how these people use these opportunity in order to electioneering and in order to use it to win vote. And now we are support Maxine. But I must also say that I think that part of the problem in both industry is that the Rastafarian community in Jamaica, there's a problem as it relating to unity. And that is something that I think that they definitely will have to fix. That is where I want to make my contribution.
But can it be fixed?
Just a minute. Just,
It
just a
doesn't.
minute.
It doesn't have to be fixed.
Ratigan, we haven't heard from Ratigan for some time now. What's your
He's
take, bro?
absorbing.
Yeah, what's your take on what's that? And then Ratigan, you're very important, man. You're the lawyer in all of this.
You're muted. You're muted.
You have to unmute, bro.
No, it's frozen.
Let me go ahead and interject since everybody said. I heard what you just said, Rupi, and here's my take. For a very long time, the classism, the colorism has entered into the fray when it came to dancehall, and even before that, when you had the reggae. Ska was embraced. 'Cause Ronnie Nasral and that crowd took that Ska International. And then when it was overwhelmed by rocksteady and reggae, then we saw a change in who was participating. And that's the key word, the participation. Everything that Maxine is doing points to the fact that she got to fight that fight by herself. Because the government, and when I say the government, this current government and all subsequent GLP governments never had an interest in any social programs like the PNP did. And it was Michael Manley who broke down the barriers, right, in Beverly Hills and elsewhere, and created a level playing field so that people could go, just like how the Higglers them could go and get into upscale neighborhoods. Why? Because Michael finally allowed them to sell their goods at a market price that was everywhere else. They didn't have to come and go shop and then get starvation wages. It's the same way Michael allowed the genre to take off and allowed people to start making the kind of monies that they could make. I remember the first time when I was president of the Jamaica Association in Houston, and we had to pay $10,000 for a no-name reggae band. I mean, they were good, but they didn't have that name. They didn't have that promotion. And then I realized now that reggae bands were finally starting to demand and to make money. And this was the 80s. And today they're doing a lot better than $10,000 a show, right? Think of this. Think of how the police and all these other groups were able to rebound after their music was waning. And how they use reggae and the background sound to build themselves up and become ever so popular. There's several groups out there that became extremely popular, drafting the sound of in Jamaica. So my thing is the ganja going along the same route where ganja is taken over by a unique, how can I say, sophisticated, upscale set of people that charge $10,000 for licensing and $2,000 for transport. US, not talking Jamaican. So that right away they start excluding people because our people that you're talking about don't have the kind of outlay, cash outlay to do that. So if we can realize that we should have planned for this day when ganja was legalized, and we still need to organize as a group, not as individuals, organize as a group to master the marketing, develop the business, and to expand internationally in line with everybody else who's doing reggaeton and reggae and dancehall all over the world. Because this is what our people have to learn. And they're
Herb,
probably going to go to school to learn
Herb,
how to do that. Yeah.
Herb,
What's up, Mike?
Herb. We're going to have a discussion on this topic with Rupi. Rupi's going to come back with members of the association and talk about that. So I want to bring back Ratigan into the conversation. Ratigan.
Yeah.
Ratigan?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, you were saying, I want to bring you back into the conversation. You were saying?
No, I was saying I can't improve upon anything that's been said. And so I'd rather stay in just be a listening post. And if there's something to offer commentary on, then I will. But at this point, I'm just listening and learning, So
there was something that she said though that I think it kind of caught your attention a bit, and I was hoping that you'd speak on that. When she mentioned about when Maxine mentioned about the disconnect between the Jamaican government and the diaspora, the deliberate disconnect. Right. So I know that one caught your attention. So I think you might want to talk on that.
They go
I want to say something, Max. I want to ask Maxine a question about something she said earlier.
Well, I said Mr. Ratigan has said a lot in saying that he's not saying anything.
No. Maxine was making a comment. Go ahead, Maxine.
I said Mr. Ratigan has said a lot by saying that he's not saying anything.
Patrick dragged me in the ring, man. No, but all right. No, it's look. It's my considered judgment that this government, and I say this government, not because this is the only government that I believe is guilty of corruption, but the type of corruption that we see here and the maladministration and the misfeasance, all the things that you would think when you think about bad governance, we see it displayed almost on a daily basis in Jamaica. And the depressing part about it is that we don't have too many people like Rupi who is unafraid to speak out frequently and loudly. We don't have too many people like him, and that's why the diaspora now has jumped in to fill that void of a conscious and an objective voice where we can speak truth to power and tell the emperor that he's naked. People are afraid to do that in Jamaica simply because they've been beaten down. When you make comments about your prime minister, when I say your prime minister, it's my prime minister too, because I believe that once the election is over, then that's it. We have to support the government until there is no need to support the government. But whenever you criticize this government, we've seen the results. Them drag people from underneath them bed, and drag them from wherever, and them still can't drag out the top 200 criminals that them look for. You know, them can find somebody in a deal. Them fine if you criticize the government. But if you shoot up people and you rob and you steal and you commit all kinds of criminal activity, them can't find it. Them put it on a top 200. So that's my issue with this government, and it's a big issue. It's a big issue, and like I tell people all the time, I'm non-partisan. When I left Jamaica, I was not eligible to vote. I had no interest in politics in Jamaica. I was busy trying to make a career for myself. And this turn just happened recently. But when you look at what's going on and you look at the people suffering, I mean, it's to the point now where we have to start doing something drastic. And I've been telling people, when they come to you, the next election, when they come to you and they give you the two-piece chicken, or as Isaac would say, the big six, and the T-shirt and the cap or whatever. At one point, I was telling them, don't take it, but now I'm telling them, take it. But vote your conscience, vote your kitchen table issues. If a politician is there, the politician is fixing the roads, you have a job, your children are well schooled, there are no housing issues, no infrastructure issues, no health issues in your community, then whether that person is JLP, PNP, or UIC, vote for that person because that person is doing good for your family, your community. But if that's not the case, then take whatever the handout is and then you do something else, because it's obvious that, you know, it's obvious that whatever they're giving you now is not going to change over the next 5 years. And I'll just make one final point on that, since Patrick dragged me in.
And Maxine.
It's a very simple equation, right? There's a social contract between the citizens and the people who govern. And that is, we give you, it's transactional. We give you our vote and you promise in receipt of our vote, you promise to take care of us, take care of our issues, right? It's like big daddy. But whenever that doesn't happen, then you have to make a change. Here's the biggest problem I have. Somebody comes to you and they say, I'm going to give you $5,000 and you give me your vote. You have just given them a job where they're earning, I don't know what the salary is, based on the 200, 300%. Rupi probably can answer this. I think it's like, I don't know, 12 million. How much is it per year now for our parliament here on Rupi?
Frozen.
Yeah, look, no, I'm not frozen, but look like him now, hear me. Herb, how much is it for a politician? Or Patrick, anybody know how much?
20 million.
Too much.
Yeah, go ahead.
20 million for the opposition and about 23 million for the regular MPs.
All right. So you get $5,000 for your vote, and you've given that person a job for the next, technically speaking, 5 years. They're making 20 million a year. They've given you the equivalent of 1,000 Jamaican dollars per year for the next 5 years, and you've given them the equivalent of what, 100 million, 20 million,
Yeah, 100 million.
Yeah, 100 million. Yeah, 100 million over the course of 5 years. Yeah. And you get 1,000. I hope people see the absurdity in that and start organizing communities and start making demands. I think it was Rupi who mentioned something like that, to start making demands of the government. So that's what I have to say. And for people listening, watching, tuning in about another hour, we're going to be on Wayne Lonesome, where we'll have more time to explore this and other issues affecting the populace. When I say the populace, talking about middle class, poor class, poverty-stricken class, because the rich people can't take care of themselves. So for those three classes I mentioned, I'm going to tune in over upon Wayne Lonesome program. I'm going to get a fulsome discussion about these and other issues, political issues affecting the people. So you shouldn't start me up in a mic.
I wanted to ask Maxine some Mikey. I wanted to
Go
ask
ahead, lads. Go
Maxine
ahead. Go ahead.
a
Go ahead,
question
Blas.
and something she raised earlier. Maxine, you raised the case of the reggae music fraternity versus the reggaeton community. Um, oh, Socks, what's your vision of this case? I'm basing my argument on the fact that in the early development of the reggae dancehall music,
Hold on, we can't hear you.
this the very thing that we are
But they have
the
you
very
jump on
thing
up.
that we are up against
But
the reggaeton community for is what we were doing
not them is
is
that issue.
is what is the very thing we were doing to launch reggae and dancehall. I mean, we were using foreign rhythms,
Neutrality.
and talking foreign rhythms without without even any copyright even consideration. So, what's your vision on how this might turn? Do you have any hope that this might be a successful case?
Yes, I think, as Mr.
Did you?
Rattigan, the lawyer, says, all lawsuits are very good. Lawsuits don't necessarily result in like actual ruling that is on behalf of either defendant or plaintiff. But a lawsuit can bring forward certain facts and factors, again, on behalf of the creative class of Jamaica, wherein I think we have the opportunity, we should have the opportunity to use our own music amongst ourselves to create, again, the function of the intellectual property laws of Jamaica on behalf of the creative people of Jamaica should give us the right to use our cultural, resources in a manner where we are already, if value comes out of that exercise, then there is just like any other resource in Jamaica, we would be able to share it, with the collective. When someone outside of Jamaica uses it this way and successfully, it should be allowed, because clearly when you look at it, that use has created billions of dollars. So what you want is the ability to benefit from those billions of dollars by having a structured way that people, knowing that your style and your innovations are appropriately, can be used, and then you benefit. You may not benefit as an individual. I don't think Stelia and Clevie are going to benefit individually. However, if we have an astute NGO, civil society organization, that looks at the culture of Jamaica in how you have, described it, and creates a pattern over the last 60 years of Jamaica's innovation and its effect on international markets. What we have not achieved in those years is benefit for Jamaica. So to me, when I look at it, I see, well, okay, if Steely and Clevie don't win as a producer, the industry should win in some form of settlement, right? From in the music industry of the world. When I say of the world, is really the US, more so than even any other nation, because that is where the hub of the global music industry, sits. And Jamaica's role in and pattern should be acknowledged almost like a trade agreement. You understand? And that has been my thought pattern, that we can't look at this thing individually, even though I like the fact that this individual case has occurred, and I'm not looking at it, like judging it whether Steely and Clevey uh, wins, because obviously the American industry is not going to close itself down on behalf of a rhythm, right? However, someone.
Stick a pin,
So,
Maxine. I'm in total agreement with you, right? My concern is that this could set a precedent in which backfires on the Jamaican industry, seeing that a lot of our early DJs and those guys were riding American rhythms. They also wrote American rhythms, right?
yes, that's what
So
I'm saying. I
what
think
if
go
what
ahead.
what if it sparks a backlash in that, okay, some people say, all right, since this is what you guys are about, we are going to demand our intellectual property rights which were overlooked in the previous years. That's my concern.
Well, as I said, the lawsuit is good. As I understand on industry, on this level, is that this involves trade. Eventually, this is a trade agreement, right? Trade between countries, right? And what should have happened, even with the ganja, that was one of the first letters that came from the Rastafari community, well, that I represented the council, as you know, Rupert, was we wrote to the U.S. Embassy in Jamaica to let them know that California has every brand value of the Rastafari community trading on, that had been appropriated over the years. So every name that a Rasta could have created as a brand to put on the ganja to reflect the culture was already taken and owned by individuals in California, which is the leading ganja producing state of America. So if the government was astute and working on behalf of the people and recognized in that industry who was going to be your competitor, right? And where your value was, your intellectual property rights would have been the first area, not your cultivation or export or anything. It would have been to recognize, wow, we have a global brand. Where is it being exercised? It's being exercised in the largest trade market of ganja in the world. Who went and opened their brand there? Mali Natural, right? Using everything and sold it out to a major company using everything that Jamaica would have used to export to the world. Was already owned now by an international company.
It's
You
like selling
understand?
the soul.
Selling, yeah. And so you are already cut off of your feet. You understand what I'm saying? Before you even get to go there. And then, so again, I was speaking about the case with the reggaeton. For me, I'm looking forward to the discussion to raise to the level of trade, and who I was looking at Mr. Rattigan, see if I could invite him
Yes.
to put in a party of interest amicus brief to the judge in the reggaeton case.
But
to bring.
where would that need to go? Would that need to go in Jamaica
No,
or
no, no,
Yeah,
no. In the US,
international
in
court?
the
Oh, okay,
US, it's
okay.
international because most of the cases involving Jamaican music and rights like these are
I think
never in
Raffigan want to say
Jamaica.
something.
No, I'm just putting a point before he answers. Most of the
Yeah.
cases relating to the music, like Whalers, for example, in California, you had two companies suing each other over Lee Perry material. Lee Perry wasn't in the case, right? And when the people brought up the point that, but Lee Perry, the music, etc., was created in Jamaica, they jumped over that fact, the judge. You understand? It was very interesting to me. And, I recognize that. How does international laws, especially in the US market, view Jamaica legal system? Right? And how, like they say, oh, Jamaica, they don't have these issues in Jamaica. We can go down to Jamaica and get a understanding from the Jamaica legal system. And so they went and they decided the case amongst two pirates, right? On behalf of which pirate had more rights than the other. So, with that background, and I'm looking at this case, you understand? And seeing the implications and where the judge is he's a Haitian judge, actually. He's from Haiti. And he was a DJ in college, right? So he's really thinking, you know what I mean? It's not a white American, non relatable judge. This is a Haitian judge,
Well,
Haitian American,
that's
right?
interesting because
Well, gentlemen,
one second,
gentlemen,
Mike.
I think.
Let me just.
Go ahead.
Can
Go
I have
ahead.
something? All right. Well,
Yeah, go
sorry to
ahead.
interrupt you, Patrick. Maxine, one of the things that we do I have a program every Saturday from 3 to whenever. And one of the things we're doing now is we're doing a primer on the Constitution, the Jamaican Constitution, because there's a constitutional reform committee going around parading itself as the end all
I'm
be
aware.
all to the ills of our Constitution. And frankly speaking, in my opinion, most of them, they have no idea what they're doing. So what we're doing for our people is that we have a resident attorney, and he's going over the fundamental rights and freedoms in that Constitution, because we understand that most of our people have never read the Constitution. And a significant portion of those who have read the Constitution, they don't understand some, if not most of the material there, most of the provisions there. Now, after listening to all of you, it just dawned on me. Rupi reeled off a number of names from Kingston 11. And I started thinking to myself, how many of those individuals ever heard the term or they know about the term intellectual property? Reason I say that is because I've been approached by several artists over the last year and a half, 2 years, who felt that they've been gypped out of money owed to them because they were presenting some sign. And I asked them, did you read this? They said, no, the man said, well, just sign right yourself and make your money. And I said, but did you take it to an attorney? Did anybody review it with you? No, they don't know. And so when Rupi reeled off the names, I'm sitting here thinking, how many of those people know exactly, if they've ever signed a piece of document, know exactly what they're signing away, their rights. So you just gave me an idea, because I'm going to go talk to the resident guy, because I think this would be one of the attractions for the program, is to have a primer on intellectual property, to explain to people that it's not just about music, it's also about books, etc. Right? It's your creative product and how you can protect it. And so I think the lawsuit with Lydia and Stevie, that's okay. But we're missing something there. And that is, how do we get artists now to understand what's being presented to them, what their rights are, and how they can protect their rights when they sign a piece of paper? What's your take on that?
My take on that is that
Um,
since the 1993 Copyright Act update, that's how many years ago now? 1993 would be like 30 years.
30
Mhm.
years.
They have been, when I tell you that there's no resources, right, given to an act or a law to educate the people, right? So for another 30 years, the conditions, when you're going to when you look at the conditions of how people record or how they feel, they go to a studio or when something happens, in my mind, Jamaica should have a sui generis creative law about the music that understands that this is how the people um, act, this is how they create. So whoever creates anything, once it leaves, everybody must know now, whatever you do, when it leaves to become a commercial product, it it's not going to be dependent simply on you, because I, the government, have to protect you, like how they protect the tusks or certain products out of certain countries culturally. You can't even take a picture of it because it is protected, right? The level of how these inner city, where the bulk of the music and the creativity occurs, they have no access to any lawyer. They have no money to sit down as they are thinking, oh, before I go buy jammies, let me go and get a lawyer to go figure out if I should record for jammies. And it is unrealistic to me, when I have observed now over the years, to think that you're going to have that kind of micro, you know, experience. You have to have a principle that people, for example, coming in to take photographs or do documentaries, anything that they come in to take out already has a protection, right? So this is why I said they need to engage the international diaspora Jamaican companies who receive, because all of this flies out. No deals are done in Jamaica. Everybody records, does the tape, etc. Look how things are happening. And they come into the international markets, England or wherever in the world, and then they do the deals. That's when the contract comes into place. So you, as the government of your nation, knowing that your product is coming out of these environments that have no access because they have no money. And if you have lawyers in Jamaica, I'm in several estate cases in Jamaica. You can't get a good lawyer. If you have a good lawyer, you have about 50 million case going up into the ceiling. You understand what I'm saying? The legal system in Jamaica, it take you 10 years to get a, if you go in and you have a problem, they put it on for another 6 months. So to tell people, go and get your things done, it's not that you wouldn't tell them or maybe have that as a option or as an outcome. But Jamaica needs to set some laws on behalf of the condition, the social condition of the people that are the most creative, because the most creative is not coming from the universities or the uptowns. They're coming from a certain class that are deprived of the basic rary. And how this music is created, I don't see, like you have your Edna Man, the college, and you have a certain, like it has a
but
channel going there. But the majority of the creation is not happening at Edna Manley College. It's happening on the streets
but
and in the communities.
Maxine,
Yes.
I would think though that to a great extent I want to agree with Ratigan. that the hustle as it relating to both players of instrument and artists in general is so great. And I think a huge part of that problem, outside the fact that government need to put regulation in place and to more work as a facilitator to ensure that these people get them right. The fact is that a lot of the players in this industry are in the main hustlers. And is after decades that them start to understand how the business works and basically what they need to do in terms of protecting them rights as it relating to copyright. So to a great extent, I agree with Sir Rattigan in saying that the players in the industry themselves outside of what government need to do, because you're raising a broader point. You're raising a more national point. But I am speaking to the individual players now. There's too much of these guys, man, who, I mean, them grab the little pittance so them get on. Nobody now think about copyright. Nobody now think about how them can live, and after them fade away and so on and so forth and all of that. And I think that is a huge problem. And it come back to an earlier point I raised too. The historian like yourself and Charles Campbell and Ibo, may him soul rest in power, and so on and so forth. I think that outside of the Rastafarian community and the thing of unity around these issues, part of the problem too is unity in terms of the wider industry players around these issues. And sometimes it's just some little petty squabbles and so on and so forth that don't make John want to talk to Tom and so on and so forth. And I think that too contribute to part of the problem. I don't know if you agree with me.
I agree.
Well,
I've been
on that note, Virgin,
it's 42.
hold on. We have gone over 2.5 hours now. This is a topic that is a age-old topic, a age-old struggle. We're not going to resolve it tonight. But I would like us to continue the discussion with Maxine. To answer the question, not so much answer the question, but I think what we can do is people like Maxine, who is engaged in this work, going up against all the obstacles and what have you, we need to support those individuals. We need to support them, encourage them to continue the work that they are doing. Because it's not an easy work. It's not an easy work. And knowing the Jamaican politics, I from what I know, the music industry is more political than the actual politics itself. So I think we have to break for the evening, because we have done and continue this discussion sometime next week if Maxine is available. I can say this much, that consistently we have 190 listeners from the start. So this is a very interesting topic, and we should continue to explore it. Okay,
and
we agree. Can we
I,
continue next week?
I definitely agree, Mike. But
let's hear what Maxine.
What I would want
to
say, what I would want to say as well is you had asked Maxine
let Maxine talk. Let Maxine.
Yeah, before she respond, I just wanted to say that you had asked her a very key thing which would really love to hear her answer on. So if she can answer it now, to come back and deal with it, and that is in terms of she as a woman, right, taking on all that she's dealing with. We want to hear more about that.
Well, I'm a tomboy. So
I think that should be a topic by itself.
I love the being associated. My whole life I've always been surrounded by the male. My whole life, I've just been attracted in terms of whether it's my consciousness evolved that. So I have never I understand what has happened with women, and I understand when it has occurred with me, but it roll off of my back. You understand? Because I already think I'm on par with whoever. You understand? So and the result in my life has shown that I get a lot of slings and arrows, but my progress is maintained. And I know of the issues of gender and all of that, but it don't bother me. At no time in my life and experience has it ever bothered me, other than like being a person of color. You know that you are discriminated against. Certainly being a woman, you are discriminated against. But in essence, I'm a fighter. So
Present
all
day
of that,
nanny.
yes. So all of those discriminations just is okay, blah blah. But what I wanted to leave with, in terms of my thought process about the copyright, is because of this issue and all of that occurred in Jamaica. I went to the Rastafari Indigenous Rights platform, and when I saw what was being applied to Indigenous rights, where people understood that you were being oppressed by the imperialistic, movements across nations and states, there was laws that arose, collective laws, not individual laws, but collective laws that they suggested the development of councils and trust funds on behalf of the collective, not the individual. And those laws gave us also retroactive rights, meaning simply because rights were taken away doesn't mean that you could not raise your hand, you understand, and say there's a owner. And there was methodologies that not just based on Western concepts, but and I think that it applies to our music, even though it has entered the commercial space, that we ought to recognize how we create. And we create in a folk manner, not just, like partner, like how communities, like how you speak about Waterhouse, or yes, that we need to study ourselves and come up with what they say sui generis, original means of defining and defending what is going to happen. Everybody would say like, oh, we need to be a first world country, blah blah blah. But infrastructurally, unless there's reparations and a whole bunch of things, we're not going to reach there in the near future. I mean, I'm not proposing to overthrow anything, but I'm speaking in this time and space. So I'm saying, we ought to think outside of the box in terms of
Why
our
not?
rights and how we defend them. Yeah. So I leave with that, and I'm open to be a member of this group. And I'm to tell Rupi that
So
Waterhouse is
can you,
a outcome of the 50th to the dancehall 50th, to be seen as the trench town of dancehall, right? So I'm already in negotiation with the quartet for that to occur.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes,
So I'm
yes, yes.
here. So we can book our next
okay,
week if
Yeah,
you're
we were. I think I speak for
Radigan,
everybody when I say we were
Radigan,
all happy to have you here, Maxine.
Radigan, you
la-
should
Happy to
exchange
have you, Maxine.
exchange number with yeah.
one last thing, Maxine. The
Okay.
World Intellectual Property
So I want
Organization
to thank you.
How much power do they have?
They have power. They have power because what I found about the United Nations is not like they have power in a country like Jamaica that depends so much on aid.
Yeah.
And if you bring certain rights, you know, they don't really have power, but they have more power than you writing to people or trying to get meetings and they don't want to meet with you. So if you go to the United Nations and you complain, then you're more likely to get a meeting.
Okay.
In that way.
Okay. All right. Got you. So they are
Blessings.
supporting
Thanks for
their
being here,
position.
Maxine.
Yes.
On that note, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank everyone for. We're going to see you next Sunday.
Yes, definitely. I put
You're
this
a
as
very
a
busy
Looking
person.
forward to it.
no, but remember, say what this is Waterhouse
So can
vibes,
we
right?
book you for next Sunday?
Yeah, definitely. Because I'm pushing my Waterhouse agenda.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I have to become branded Waterhouse.
I didn't get that.
I
It
said
has to become branded Waterhouse.
I have to become a branded Waterhouse.
You have to talk with Mr. Rattigan about that.
Mr. Rattigan about my branding.
Hey, you know what? Before you go,
Yeah, Mr. Rattigan will handle all of that. He's the resident.
No, before I go on, Maxine, you just no before Maxine, but she just mentioned something. She said that the UN, because Jamaica is so heavily dependent on aid, and the UN provides a lot of aid to Jamaica through different organizations within the UN itself. But I just wanted to share something with the entire panel. I think Patrick knows about it and Herb knows about it. But I wrote to, every donor dollar on established organization that goes to Jamaica, it has to go through PIOJ, right? That's the organization that they're responsible because they use that money for programs and all of that. So every dollar must go through them. So I wanted to start this project because Jamaica has received a tremendous amount of money over the years. Donor funds. And for the most part, we don't see an accounting. We don't know what the money was spent on. So I used the ATI, the Access to Information Act, and I said to them, please give me all the information about donor funds received from 2016 to present. Now, I heard from a very good source, very knowledgeable source, very reliable source that they have all the documentation. That's where all the documentation is stored regarding donor funds. The money might end up in the Bank of Jamaica, but the control of that money and the control of the program is through PIOJ, Planning Institute of Jamaica. They wrote me back a few days ago, and it was an astounding answer. They said, we have no paperwork for any donor funds. No paperwork for any donor. So now you mentioned the UN. So now I'm getting up. Now next week I'm going to saddle up and then reach out to the UN, reach out to the US, reach out to there are a couple other agencies that provided. I think there were 16 agencies, official established agencies that they got money from. So I'm going to reach out to all of them and say, listen, you gave Jamaica money. Jamaica says they have no paperwork from you. Is that true? And so we'll see what they say. Cause I'm sure they got paperwork. But what happened is that they don't want to give me the paperwork because they know the questions I'm going to ask.
After you get the paperwork.
Right. So they just come out and they just, and it's an amazing, they actually, it wasn't as if somebody called me and told me this. They actually wrote to me.
Wrote to you.
Yeah, and said, this agency has no paperwork regarding donor funds. So
they're going to make sure they fire the person who signed the letter before you come back.
Okay, looking forward next week.
All right, gentlemen, we have to go.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Big up yourself.
Be good.
Well, okay, we have to go, gentlemen. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You.
Maxine, thank you again.
Maxine,
We'll talk,
Maxine.
Yes.
Maxine,
Bless,
just a
bless.
reminder for your meeting Thursday, Maxine.
everybody.
Yes,
And
yes,
Ratty can
definitely.
remember to link with Maxine. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right, bless.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.